Morning YouTube, Mr. Mo here. Back at you with another video. In today's video we're going to have a little bit of a look at survival kits. Now for the people who follow my channel regularly, they were probably expecting this in December, but I got called forward for an operation to help rebuild my jaw, which has obviously affected my speech a little bit. I do have some titanium screws in the top there just to hold things together, but I am getting through it and I'm not going to let it stop me from bringing you content. Now this video, like I said, was meant to be a few months ago, and it came about from a conversation with a gentleman called Rob, and we were discussing SAS survival tins. So what I wanted to do was bring you a version of it today, and if you stick around in the video I'm going to put lots, well, B-roll footage in, especially on some natural navigation when we come to the compass section. Okay, so if you'd like to see that, stick around and see what we've got. So originally I went back, I got all my SAS books out, I had them for many years. Basically it was one of the books that kind of motivated me to join the army in the early 80s. I just loved the whole concept of the book and being outdoors and all that kind of stuff. And I do think there is a valuable place to have such a kit. But you do have to bear in mind that that kit is for a trained soldier, special forces probably, who is going to use this kit more to escape and evade the enemy soldiers on the front line. So the idea behind it is they dump their kit and they go and they try and get themselves to safety. So for us guys who are into survival, especially with the fact that we want to get rescued, there is a bit of a clash there, but needless to say the items that's in the tin is a really handy thing to have. So I went back, like I said, got all my books out, had a look, started compiling all the components as per the book, and then it suddenly dawned on me that Rob wasn't asking me to recreate the John Lofty Wiseman survival tin. He was asking me my opinion on how I would do it. So at that point the books got put away. I went back to a few other books I have, obviously as reference points, and I also decided that the 2-ounce tin, although this is a tin they used in that original book, I decided that I would have this one. Okay, so it's slightly bigger, not much, maybe a centimetre either way. It's not too much bigger, and it's still within the remit of a pocket survival kit. So I'll put this one away because that was the one that was in the book, but that's not the one I'm going to show you. What I'm going to show you is my version of it. Okay, this is a titanium tin, and as you can see I've actually put a few things on the top, and as I go through the contents I'll do what I normally do, and I will fire a photograph of the version up on the screen so you guys can get a really good chance to have a look at it. This one here has a roll top closure, and when you open it up you can see, and I'll talk more about this when I get to the knife section, but I actually have the handle for the knife just bolted on. It's small Allen keys, I think they're 4mm, and I actually have the key under there with a little bit of tape, and there is a good reason for that, and I'll touch on that as we move forward. So like I said, as I pull out some stuff I will throw up pictures of it and we'll explain. Just straight from the top, guys, it is extremely cold out here today, but it is absolutely beautiful. Sun's kind of disappeared, but hopefully it doesn't start to rain. So in the very top here guys, I just have a little bag, and inside there is actually just a little strand of char cloth. There is some more char cloth in there, but when I was packing it down I didn't want it to rattle too much. Not that that's an issue, but I just stuck that in on top because I had it, so it just aids in fire lighting. It's just a little bit of char cloth there. Now like I said, as I go through this tin is designed for soldiers, not civilians, but it is a great addition to your kit. The only thing I would say about the survival tin is it's no use in a drawer in your house, it's no use in your car. If you're going to have something like this, it needs to be in your pocket. So make sure if you're going down this route, A, you know how to use the stuff that's in it, and B, is you've got it when you're going to need it. Some Bankline Cordage, this can be really handy to have, and you'll see more when I talk about the saw blade, because again you can cut a little bit of hazel or green wood basically, and you can basically make a good handle for the saw blade so you can get a proper grip on that. Off the top of my head, guys, I think there's about 10 meters of bankline there, so it's not a huge amount, but cordage is one of those things that you definitely need in a situation like that. Obviously you are limited to what you can carry, because the point is it all has to fit in a tin, so you just have to be a little bit careful with how much and what you need. An army wire saw, okay, I'm sure you've seen these in action. Hopefully I can get a little bit of B-roll and pop it up there and you can show you actually cutting a piece of wood. Again, on top we have a signal mirror. So this is a Maritac signal mirror, and what I'd like to do, obviously going on as we progress throughout the sort of next few months, is I may take these out individually and do like a little 10-minute clip and post it up, just, and then sort of make a collection of videos just on this survival kit for you guys to come back and reference in the future. Or if you've come late to the party, you can probably, they'll all be there and you can watch them all back to back, and it'll give you a really good sort of one-stop shop of everything that's in a tin and how to use it. Okay, so that's the signal mirror, handy bit of kit to have. Other things, now I do have some snares in here for catching rabbits, and as we go through the video and I've showed you the contents, I'll organise it out on the table, and then we'll talk a bit about the rules of 3, and then ultimately towards the end of the video I'm going to sort of do a deep dive conversation. May not be here, might do it at home next to the fire, whatever, but we're going to have a little bit of a deep dive into the concept of food, the reality of it outside in a survival situation, especially when this is all you have. Okay, so I tend to always think of any small kit like this where I have snares, fishing hooks, etc, and I always like to think of it as a placebo kit, because it's something that's going to keep your mind active, it's something that it's going to keep you focused in that situation, and if you're lucky you're going to catch a rabbit or two. Okay, but there is a bit of a problem with just eating rabbits out in the wild, which we'll come to later on. So we'll put that one over there. Fire lighting. Now fire lighting, obviously like we said, with a little bit of charcoal there, I'll put fire lighting stuff over here. I do have these small tampons, which when you break them up, they are massive amount of cotton wool in there, so you're almost pretty much guaranteed the fire from that, which is great news. And they're waterproof as well, they're inside the tin, so they're always going to stay dry. And I have here a Ferrocerium rod, but rather than the normal striker, which actually incidentally I do have taped to the bottom of the tin, but I have this is an old file, the top of a file, and I really like it. It does do a really good shower of sparks on the Ferrocerium rod, but because it's carbon steel, the way I've angled it, it also makes a really good striker light if you're using char cloth and flint. Okay, so that's the reason why that's in there. It's quite versatile, has a hole in it, so worst case scenario, if you do, yeah, if you have it, you can put it on your body basically and make sure you've got that all the time, and that will help with the fire lighting stuff. So like I said, I'll put all that on the table. Another aid for fire lighting, in a little vial here I have potassium permanganate. Now this is an excellent bit of kit for fire lighting. You can simply mix that with some antifreeze if you have some. I used to carry a vial of it in there, but it did tend to go a little bit gloopy, so I tend not to do that. You can mix it with sugar. There's lots of things you can do to help you with fire lighting with potassium permanganate. Also great for signalling, you know, if you're up in the hills and it's been snowing, a little bit of that. Now obviously I don't encourage you to do it because it's not particularly great for the environment, but we're talking about a survival situation here where you may need to do a marker. Potassium permanganate also excellent in the treatment of water, okay? A little bit of that left in water for probably about 30 minutes is going to basically sterilise it. And then also the more of this you put in the water, the deeper that purple will go, and then you can start to use that as a skin ointment and an antiseptic. So if you have wet feet with fungal infections, etc., you can treat that with potassium permanganate. So it is a very, very great little sort of bit of versatile kit that I do encourage you to put inside a tin for helping in fire lighting. Also here I have there's a little candle I made up in these little stainless steel pots. These stainless steel pots, again, great because if you have some cotton, perhaps a t-shirt or something, worst case scenario, you can make a little bit of char cloth in these as well. So that's a candle, so you can light that initially and that will help you get the fire going. And also in here I have, this is actually a lip balm, which is excellent. Obviously if you're out and it's cold and it's windy, you can use a little bit of that on your lips, but it's also highly flammable, so you're kind of getting two uses out of one. Again, once you've done that, you then have access to the little tin that could help you make char cloth. Okay, speaking of char cloth, I do have a whole bag of it in here as well. Really refined, really easy and nicely done. Okay, but there is different kinds. That's more sort of if you're just doing a little bit of a t-shirt, whereas you can buy this commercial stuff which is kind of wrapped up like paracord. That's available on the market should you buy it. So you can see there is actually quite a lot of items that will start a fire. In a survival situation, that is key. Getting that fire going is what's going to keep you going. Okay, what else do we have in here? We have some Gorilla Tape. It's round a tiny little bit of credit card. Again, this can really help you. Let's pull out the saw actually. So what I've got in there is a saw blade. And basically you can then go and use this to cut yourself a little bit of willow, hazel, some kind of green wood that you've got lying around. You can split that open slightly, you can pop that inside, and then you can either use your Bankline or you can use a little bit of gaffer tape to try and tape that up to give yourself a bit of a handle, which means you can start processing slightly larger pieces of wood. So that's great. Now this gaffer tape as well, or duct tape, it actually burns. So once again, you do have other means to start a fire in the case scenario. So it's quite multi-purpose and it's an excellent addition into this. So at the moment, I'll leave that in the fire lighting department and I'll leave this in the tools. Speaking of tools, basically I've put in this small knife here, okay? It's quite a, do you know what, it's actually very comfortable just to use without the scales on it, but like I said, I do have the scales here. Now, in the original John Lofty Wiseman survival tin, they talk about a scalpel or a razor blade. Now, for me, that's a no-no, purely because of the fact that if you have ever tried to skin a fish with a razor blade, it's not something that I would recommend, especially on a cold day like today. If you were lucky enough to catch a fish, to try and skin that up with nothing more than a razor blade is a bit questionable, especially of the fact that if you do nick yourself with a razor blade, you are now coming into contact with raw fish guts, etc. So yeah, not particularly a great idea. That's why I've opted for a slightly bigger tin, which gives me a little bit more real estate, and it allows me to comfortably have something that I can get a good grip on. I mean, I have fingers like pig's nipples, so you know, small knives is always going to be an issue, but you'd be surprised at what you can actually do with this. Okay, you can get a really good grip, and again, if you put those scales on, it makes it even better. Just like that, it's multifunctional, and if anyone's interested, put a comment in, and then we'll go out and we'll actually do a video where we skin a fish and we cook it over a fire or a fire pit or wherever we are. We can cook that up for you. If that's something that appeals to you, give me a shout and we can make that, we can schedule that in for the next few videos. So that sits in the tool department, and I'll put it in there. And incidentally, the lid of this comes, let me see if I can get it out. Yeah, it's jammed in there. It does have, there we go, a bit frozen today, but it does have a rubber inner in there which you can take out. If you take that off, you could actually use that on the fire, and you could cook up a pigeon breast or something on that if you really had to. Moving on, where will we go now? Yeah, so water. I have in here a Frontier emergency water filter with a straw. Again, I'll put a little bit of B-roll footage up where you can see that getting used. Here in Scotland we have very, very good quality water, and we're actually really lucky because we have access to it. Now, in a few of my other videos, there's been some comments where they've basically criticised my lack of carrying water. I understand where they're coming from, but trust me, where I come from and the areas where I go camping or where I would go to in the event of an emergency situation, trust me, there is absolutely no shortage of water. And some of that water, basically, you could probably just take the chance and drink it straight from the stream, although I wouldn't recommend it because you never know what's upstream. It could be a dead sheep in there, a dead animal, it could be all sorts of stuff in there. So basically, some kind of basic water filtration is a great idea to have in the kit, because the last thing you need to, in the event of a survival situation and you may have not so much water, the last thing you need is to give yourself an upset stomach. Okay, an upset stomach is going to give you diarrhea, it may make you vomit, and then you've basically lost all that water, which is further down the line is going to cause you major issues. Okay, and on that note, again in this survival kit I have a couple of Imodium tablets to plug the gap, so to speak. So should something like that happen to you, at least you've got short-term relief of it, which should help you sort yourself out, hopefully. So we can address the things with water with that. What else do we have? We have various spindles from a sewing machine, and again what I've done is I have various amounts of fishing line on them. This one here's again some tape just wrapped around one, and then this one some, I think this is nano paracord, I believe, which could be used as fishing line as well. So they're all sort of cordages, fishing lines, etc. on those reels there, which is great. Rubber inner tube, or just cut up into small pieces and then wrapped round. Again, fantastic long-term fire lighting ability, you can do that. Really good for lighting fires. When it's lit, it will burn, and it will stay burn even if it's wet, so it's a really good idea to have. What else do we have in here? Yep, we have a Petzel E-light emergency head torch. It has various modes on it, SOS, basically has a whistle on it as well, which is great, and then you can just turn that around, all different modes. I actually, many moons ago, I done a separate video on that, so there is one on my channel. It's an old bit of kit, but it still has purpose today. Basically, you want to go with the head torch if you can. it's going to allow you to do that hands-free thing, especially at night. If you were to be skinning a fish, you've got your head torch on, not a big a deal. Then we come to, and along with those, I have another little vial in here with some weights and fishing hooks. So obviously it's a very small kit, but what you want to do is rather have lots of little hooks rather than big hooks, because little hooks will still catch quite big fish. Okay, so you want to, and again, I say it with the greatest intentions that I believe it's a placebo. I would tend to always go for fish. If I could only eat one thing, I would go for fish rather than rabbit, because at least the fish has got some fat, natural oils and things like that in it. Rabbit tends to be more protein. And again, we will deep dive that towards the end of the video when we talk about food. Have easy Arrowhead here. Again, it's something that I had from a previous kit, so I've thrown it in there. I actually, it's quite sharp, so it can help with, you never know when you just need that little bit. You can actually make holes in things. You could even make a little bit of a hole through the stick, which would enable you to tie that on a lot better. Again, you could use it as some kind of weapon, although I doubt you would be very successful with something like that here in Scotland. There's not much running around here, and you would probably lose that fairly quickly. But it is not a bad little bit of kit. I have it, so it fits. There's no reason why it shouldn't be in there. It may come in useful for something. Here I have codeine, for obvious reasons. Also some codeine and Compede. So basically, if you are in that situation, you are probably, initially you would sit and wait and hopefully be rescued, but at some point you're going to have to make a decision to go, okay? Which means you're probably going to be on foot, and one of the more likely accidents that you're going to have is maybe a twisted ankle, so the codeine can help with that, or indeed blisters, where the Compede comes in handy here for some first aid stuff. Now I have it, this is morphine. I had these sachets as part of my cancer treatment, so this is not something that you're probably going to be able to buy in a shop. This has to be prescribed, but I have a sachet of it in there. And again, if there was an extreme sort of like a mechanical injury where I had to, that would certainly take the edge off it for a little while anyway. So that's why it's in there. I have it, it's in my kit. And again, these survival kits are kind of like a first aid kit. It should be personalised for you. It should be personalised for the situation that you foresee yourself being in. Okay, don't go worrying about other people in groups and things like that. That's not of no concern in a survival situation that you may be in. It's you, and make sure you pack the stuff you need and have it to hand. Other things I have in here is extra 2 spare batteries for my Petzel head torch. Remember, we're talking about a survival situation that's hopefully going to last less than 72 hours. So between the batteries that's in the torch plus the batteries there, that is definitely going to give you illumination for that whole period of time, which is great. So it's in there, why not? I have this is basically a needle holder, and there I have various needles in there, and I have the threads over here as shown, and then I have one large needle with a wax thread here, which could really help if you had to make a repair to clothing or something like that. And basically, I've done it before. A chap on one of the courses I was on had a hole in his boot from a thorn, and we actually managed to patch his boot fairly well with a rubber inner tube. Okay, of course you need some glue for that, so again, in there I have a little stick of glue. It can come in handy for all sorts of things, for making repairs. So a little glue stick, you can simply heat that up even over the candle, just hot enough to get a few drips onto the surface or whatever it is, and hopefully you can stick down that a bit of inner tube on it. I have in here as well, I have some just standard silver foil. Again, if you are in the situation where you have, say, a pigeon breast or a bit of meat of some description, I would highly suggest, if you've got the fire, to wrap it in tin foil, and then that way as it cooks you are keeping those essential fats and those acids, the proteins, etc., from that piece of meat, and don't let it dry out and shrivel up, because you're going to waste half of the nutrition. It's simply going to be gone. So you can use this tin, you can wrap it up in there and a bit of there, and you can just keep it cooking. If you cut it thinly enough, you can actually put it in there, that'll help it cook. And because the scales are here, when you remove them, there's a couple of holes in there, so that won't let the pressure build up inside that can too much, which is quite a good idea. I have a couple of fishing lures in here as well, or glow sticks, so you can snap them. They last for about 24 hours. Again, I have them from previous kits, so if I can get them in there, I'm going to. And then last but not least is I have my Nato button compass. Now, as I said at the beginning of the video, I'm going to give you a little introduction into natural navigation. So we're going to do that in the workshop. So we're going to jump off now, go across to the workshop and pick up some little bits of natural navigation. Okay YouTube, so what I'm going to do now is we've come into the Shed of Dreams, where we're going to discuss this button compass a little bit more in detail. I'm going to throw a picture up there on that side of the board so you can see the compass again that we were talking about. And now I'd like to show you how a little bit of planning and preparation can make the difference, a real difference, when using a button compass. So what I'd like to do for you is I'm going to draw a map of the UK. Now obviously I'm not a cartographer, so please just bear with me. Let me see. Yeah, be Edinburgh. Down. Somewhere along the lines of this. Here. Maybe Wales. Back up to Scotland. Up there. There we go. We've got the concept. So hopefully you can see how that works. Now, in the UK, so basically, I don't know, let's just say the border of Scotland and England is somewhere there. It's actually down a bit. I'm not particularly happy with that, but we'll let it go. This is the Kingdom of Scotland and this is Englandshire. And what we're going to do, and obviously this is Wales. So what we want to look at is, how do you use that button compass? How do you get the best from it? Well, wherever it is that you're going to go camping in the UK, you're not going to be too far away from what I would call a massive feature, okay? So for example, in Scotland, we would have a road that comes all the way down here, which is the A9. And what I'll do is I'll put a map of Britain up on the other side of the board, so you can see that, and you can see how those roads actually work. From Carlisle down, I mean, Carlisle's probably going to be somewhere about there. Like I said, the border's probably somewhere here, but anyway, that's not important for this lesson. But coming down here is going to be a road called the M6. So crossing here we have the Lake District, and then up in here we have the Cairngorms, either or. So what's really important is that you understand where exactly you are in relation to these great big trunk roads. So for example, if you're in the Lake District over here and you were to get lost, then you would know that the best chance that you have to be rescued and get yourself out of there would be to walk east. Okay, it's east, west, south and north. So walking east would be your best chance to get out of there, because if you walk east you will hit the M6. And again, on this map I'll put in a little bit of I'll use the ruler on Google Earth so you can kind of see approximately how many miles that you would want or you would need to walk to get out of that situation. Again, if you were, let's say you were up in Scotland, the Cairngorms kind of goes all the way through there, so you would know whether you were wanting to walk east to the A9 or you were wanting to walk west towards the A9. Also, we have a predominant feature in Scotland going this way, which would be Loch Ness. So if you were camping, I mean, this part of Scotland is very, very remote. So if I was in this situation, I would almost want to walk southeast, because the population would be more dense in and around here. Depending where I was in here, again, I'd want to walk east or west. But generally speaking, the best way you can think about it is just do your homework prior to going out, and then you know which would be the quickest route out of there. These are only 2 trunk roads, there's many more. There's one that goes right across the northeast of England. Off the top of my head, I think it's the A66. Again, so you know, basically use these massive trunk roads or these massive features like Loch Ness, whatever, to basically give yourself a direction. So if it does go pear-shaped, you've lost your rucksack, you've lost your map, even if you've lost your compass, you know the direction that you need to walk to get out of there. And there's various techniques. So like I said, we've got the compass. You can follow a straight line to east or west. But what happens if you don't have that compass? We'll touch on that in the next part. So let me just quickly prep this board and then I'll come back to you. Okay, back again. Board's been prepped. So basically, you've got your button compass. You know you're going to be walking east, west, north or south until you find one of those big trunk roads or a natural feature in the UK. Now, what happens if you don't have that compass? Can you still do it? Absolutely. So let's just presume that we have established our campsite here. Few methods we've got. We can use a stick method, so simply putting a stick in the ground. Needs to be a little bit tall, probably a metre at least. Then we have east, we have the west, we have the north, and we have south. Now obviously at this moment in time you don't know that because you've just put a stick in the ground. But what happens is the sun will rise in the east. Okay, so we now have the sun, and when the sun shines, it's going to shine onto the stick and it's going to create a shadow, and this shadow is going to look out onto the west. So you simply place a large stone, a brick, a boulder, whatever it is you can find, even another stick, on here, and now you have your west position. Now as the sun rises in the sky in the northern hemisphere, it travels due south. So at this moment in time, midday, the shadow will be falling towards the north, but the shadow will be quite small because the sun is at its highest point in the sky. So your shadow is somewhere here. Okay, so again, you can mark that with a stick, a boulder, whatever it is you have at hand, and then as the sun moves across to the west where it sets, it will then produce a shadow that goes towards the east. Okay, so when you've got that, you now have, if depending obviously how long you wait, you have now basically made yourself a compass. So if you're in the Lake District and you know you need to walk east towards the M6, then you simply getting up in the morning, first thing, where the sun rises, and you're walking towards the sun. Now, the sun is going to travel south, but it doesn't particularly matter if you veer off course, because you're still going to hit the M6 at some point. Yes, it may take you an hour more or 2 hours more, but you will eventually hit the M6. And that's how you can do that without any need for a button compass. But obviously, if you have that button compass, it gives you a straight line, which is going to take an hour or two off your journey and keep you more accurate. Okay, so that's a little bit about natural navigation. We will come back in a minute and then we'll do some more with regards to how you do that at night. So just let me clean the board and then I'll come back to you guys. So we've had a look at how the button compass can help us. We've also had a look at if we don't have a button compass, can we do it? Absolutely. But without the sun, how would we do it at night? So we'll go with this time of year, it's January. So here in the northern hemisphere we have one particular constellation that stands out a mile. Most of you will know this, and it is Orion. Okay. Now in the constellation of Orion, basically you have the 3 belt stars. Okay. Now, just as it's a matter of fact that on the 21st of December, okay, every year on the 21st of December at 12 o'clock, these belt stars project right down to true south. Okay. And I will deep dive these constellations and natural navigation throughout the course of future videos, so you can really understand how they work. But what's important to know, that unless you subscribe to the channel, you're probably going to miss a lot of this, guys. So please subscribe to the channel, and then that way you're not going to miss these things, because they'll be popped in left, right and centre, and they will really help you with your natural navigation. This is one of my most favourite subjects. When I do go down to survival school, I almost always teach natural navigation. I love it, I'm quite passionate about it. So anyway, as we can see, 21st of December, the belt stars go south. But this star here, in fact, do you know what? What I'll do is I'll just quickly rub this off and I'll move it across to here, because what I think I should do is I will throw up a video on that side of the screen so you can actually see it in real life. Or not in real life actually, but on video, and then we can talk about it a little bit more in depth. So again, 21st December, 12 o'clock, the belt stars come down here. But this star here is called Mintaka, and I'll highlight it over there. Now Mintaka, funny enough, okay, when you take the horizon and Orion starts to rise above the horizon, the first star, which is Mintaka, when it rises on the horizon, okay, is east. It's as simple as that. Now I've had a look through YouTube, and you're probably not going to find this information anywhere else apart from on this channel, but that, trust me, is east. It always rises in the east. Now obviously if you've got mountain ranges, etc, you might not see that until it's above there, which would obviously then not be true east. Okay, but if you do see the horizon and it's fairly flat, when it first rises it's east, and it follows that projection the same as the sun until it's high in the sky. Again here, blah, blah, blah. your Mintaka, there's the belt stars. Okay, and obviously that then at midnight points to south, but that's only true on the 21st of December. And then as it goes down across the sky, Mintaka then falls. So there would be your 3 belt stars, Orion underneath the horizon, and then that's west. Okay, so when you understand that, you're on your journey to start to learn natural navigation. Now, if this is true on the 21st of December at 12 o'clock, and it's the same every year, then you can start to see that it's almost like a clock. It's like a procession. Now, there's 365 days in a year, and there's 360 degrees in a circle. But you don't really need to worry about the extra 5 days. And that's because on the 21st of December, the Earth starts tilting back towards, it goes from basically one side to the other. It starts to come back into summertime where the northern hemisphere will face the sun. And basically what happens is, what appears to happen is that the sun will rise in the same position for 3 days. Okay, so we're talking the 21st of December, the sun dies, then 3 days later the sun resurrects itself and moves on its journey across the sky. So the sun, now I don't want to get all religious here, but the sun is now reborn on the 25th of December each year. So the sun dies on the 21st, takes 3 days as the Earth tilts back towards the northern hemisphere looking towards the sun, and then it continues its arc or its journey on the 25th of December. So obviously that's true for the 21st, and it's obviously true for the 21st of June, okay, the summer solstice. So basically we can more or less say that the sun moves 1 degree each day. So if you know that's there on the 21st of December at 12 o'clock, then you can start to work out where it's going to be on other days. So basically it will move 1 degree on the 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th and so on. So it's kind of giving you a calendar. It's really hard to explain, and when we actually deep dive the subject of natural navigation, I will bring that to you, and I'll have prep for it and everything like that. But what I'm trying to do today in this video is just give you a rough idea, and of course an introduction into natural navigation. Okay, so thanks for that, guys. What we're going to do now is we're going to jump back to the survival kit, and we will carry on with the other stuff that's in there. Okay, so hopefully after watching that, I'll give you a little bit of idea of just what's possible with a small Nato button compass. And as I said there, basically I'm going to be, when I do these videos, I'm going to be popping in a little bit of extra. So one day you may see a fish getting skinned, the next day you might see some water getting boiled up, some natural navigation techniques, some plants, some trees. They're all just going to get popped into my videos. So the only way you're going to know that is if you watch them. Now obviously, guys, I hope you appreciate that it takes a lot of time and effort to make these, especially here in Scotland, because the weather's not favourable, especially to come out with tripods, cameras, etc. So thanks for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe up to the channel, like, but more importantly than that, I say it every video, it's the comments. I really love interacting with you guys, having that chat. Even if sometimes the comments, you know, I'm open to all. If you're going to get nasty, I'll just delete it, but I'm open to have conversations about anything with anyone. So please keep the comments coming. I really enjoy it, and thank you very much. So I digress. I wanted to talk to you about the rules of three and why this stuff's in here. So we have the classic rule where it's basically 3 minutes without oxygen. Yeah, Of course it is. I'm not going to talk about that because it's only going to last 3 minutes, okay, and then it's done. So I'm more concerned with other ones. So that's 3 minutes, 3 hours, sorry, exposure to the elements, and now that really matters. That matters a lot, especially in an environment like this. So what kind of exposure do you have? You have the cold, you have the wet, and you have the wind or the rain, okay? Rain, wind and cold. Any one of those on their own you can probably deal with quite comfortably. 2 of them you start becoming miserable. 3 of them, now you've got an issue. And when you get the 3 of them together, then you get the 4th one that comes in, which is stress. You start getting disorientated, you start finding that you're in a stressful situation, and all of them combined puts you in a very serious condition. So basically, depending where you are, the first thing I would suggest is you've got to find yourself some shelter. The chances are you're not going to be able just to stop and build yourself a lovely little shelter, but even just standing here, I'll show you a bit later on, there's a natural sort of outcrop, it's got a little tree above it. That would be an ideal place just to get in, get out of the wind, get out of the rain, and try and light yourself a fire, okay? I would almost go on the point that if you're not confident in your fire lighting abilities, don't try. Wait until the next morning and then try again when you've kind of got yourself through the night. It's vital to get yourself into shelter first and foremost. There's no point in using all your resources that you have in this tin to try and light a fire in the pouring rain in the middle of the night. Much better to try, I know it seems daft to do, but try and hunker down for the night, get through it, and then get up in the morning and start that process and think about it with a clear head, or certainly clear skies. So yeah, that would be the first thing that we need to worry about, and then we can go 3 hours exposure to the elements. Now obviously, depending on how you're dressed, will depend exactly how long that is. 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, depends on the environment and how well you're dressed, but general rule is 3 hours. Next we have the 3 days without water. Yeah, that seems fair dues. I would guess that's right. If you have something like this, you can keep yourself hydrated. Remember that shelter building, etc. is fundamentally hard work, going and processing firewood, finding firewood, doing all those things to try and make the situation you're in better. Involves energy, okay? And one thing will surely sap you fairly quickly is if you've got dehydration on top of that. So procuring water for yourselves really high up on the agenda. Food wise, so this is the 3 week scenario. People talk about 3 weeks without food, and what I'm going to do is we will just stop here and then we'll jump over. Okay, welcome back to this part of the video. Now I purposely wanted to bring this inside so I had access to the whiteboard. Now what I'm about to tell you in this part of the video is entirely up to yourself whether you want to believe it or not. It is based on extensive research by myself, and I'm not a doctor. This is my opinion. So if you've got any medical conditions or anything like that, then please do your own research into here. This is only my opinion, can't stress it enough. Okay, so we looked at the rule of threes. So we know 3 minutes without oxygen. We're not really dealing with that one in this video. 3 hours with regards to the environment for shelter, that's absolutely correct. Just remember that it depends on which environment you have. You might have to shelter from the rain, you might have to shelter from the wind and the rain, or indeed it might be such a cold environment that your idea of shelter may be fire. So it's going to be one of them. So you obviously have to work that out for yourself and make the right decisions. 3 days without water, absolutely, I would say definitely 3 days, and what I'm about to tell you will reinforce that model of the 3 days without water. The 3 weeks without food, I have an issue with that. 3 weeks is 21 days, right? But in actual fact, that's not true at all, because the human body, believe it or not, can actually go about 40 days without any food whatsoever, providing of course you are a fit individual and you don't have any medical conditions. So basically what I'd like to do is bring in, I'll put a chap up here, his name's Angus, he was from Tayport here in Scotland, and he managed to go 382 days without eating any food. He holds the world record for it, and over that duration he actually lost 125 kilograms. Now that's some going, that's for sure. Okay, in fact the average person, now when we, in this video, the average person is between 75 and 80 kilograms. That person has an average of 20% body fat, and he carries, or she carries, 126,000 spare calories. Okay, now that is that's a party going on right there. Okay, but you've got to know how to access those fat stores. And incidentally, those, if you take those 126,000 and divide them by 40, it roughly works out to be 3,150 calories a day for those 40 days. So first of all, let me explain what a calorie is. A kilocalorie, that is its correct name, and it's the amount of energy required to raise 1 litre of water by 1 degree centigrade. That's all it is. It's simply a measurement of heat. Okay, so you're going to hear them referred to as calories, kcals, kilocalories, all that, but in actual fact they are exactly the same. So we have what's called our basal metabolic rate, which we will now call our BMR, and that comes in at 1,500 calories per day. Okay. And that number is simply the amount of calories required for all the things that's going on underneath the hood. So your digestion, keeping your body at 37 degrees, all those body functions, keeping blood sugar stable, all that kind of stuff is what they call your BMR. Okay, and that is for everyone. Now obviously we are all different shapes and sizes, so for example a bus driver doesn't need anywhere near the same calories as what a soldier would need. So what they say on top of this is plus 500. Okay, and that gives you your 2,000 kcal per day, and this is the reference intake per adult per day that most countries use when they put the labels on the food packaging, etc. Now, from that 2,000 calories, let me put up there that it's 75 kilograms to 80 kilograms. I've used both those weights because various subjects, some refer to the average person as 75 kilograms, some refer to them as 80, so it's somewhere in that group. Okay, and basically from those calories come in the form of macronutrients. Now there are other ones, but we're only going to deal with the three that's basically essential for life. Okay, which is carbohydrate, protein, and fat. Okay, now there is a guide out there that says you should be eating those three macronutrients in the following quantities. So it's 60% for carbohydrates, 15% for protein, and 25% for fat, which equates to, based on our 75 to 80 kilogram person, 1,200 calories from carbohydrate, 300 kcal from protein, and then 500 kcal from fat. And it's worth saying at this point that 300 kcals of protein is roughly 2 chicken breasts that you would buy in the supermarket. Okay. Now, Carbohydrates, what are they? Come in two different forms: simple sugars and then complex carbohydrates. Basically, the simple ones are, well, natural ones would be honey. Processed ones would be your fizzy drinks, your Coke, your cakes, your biscuits, all that kind of thing. Basically the bad stuff. Bread's in there as well. The more complex a carbohydrate is, basically means it has fibre in it and starches, so they're the better carbohydrates. So that would be things like sweet potatoes, corns, peppers, all onions, carrots, etc, etc. Okay, and they release their energy a lot slower because they have this fibre mixed up in the structure of it. Now, I'm not going to go too deep. I want to try and keep it simple for the purposes of this video. So I'm not going to really go too much into it, although you may beg to differ by the time you've watched this. Okay. Proteins then. So animal meat is protein. Basically eggs, fish, etc. But the protein basically gives us those amino acids, and those amino acids are absolutely essential for good health. They're what builds our muscles, they keep our bones proper. They are absolutely probably the most important out of all of these things to have, especially if you are in a survival situation. And then last we have the fat. Now again, fats come in all various shapes and sizes. We have extra virgin olive oil would be a really good source of fat to have, as would avocados, avocado oil, and then we tend to have the lesser ones, which would be the sort of your trans fats that you say you find in the fish and chip shop that they're frying your food in, vegetable oils or mixtures of different vegetable oils. Okay, they're not so good for you. But all in all, here is your 2000 kcal chap. Okay. Now, what I'd like to do is obviously, in fact, I'll just leave that up there. Now, I'll take it off. Not all food is made equal, so this food has different values. So for example, 1 gram of carbohydrate has 4 calories. 1 gram of protein has 4 calories, and 1 gram of fat has 9 calories. So you can see there's quite a big bit of a difference. Now, in a lot of the manuals, if you go again and do your own research, a lot of them say that carbohydrates is actually 3.75. But for argument's sake, we're going with averages, and a few of the studies use the 4 kcal model, and that's the one I'll use here today. Now, as I said earlier, for us, if we were in a true survival situation, I would go with the protein. And there is a very simple rule with the protein, and it's how you can actually work out the amount of calories that you require for your body weight, because I'm guessing the vast majority of people from the UK or America, especially in our age group, is probably not coming in at the 75 to 80 kilogram rule. Okay, the people who watch this channel are more likely to be over the age of 40, and therefore highly likely to be carrying a few extra pounds. Okay, just think of yourselves as survival machines. Okay, so what we're saying here is that the protein is the most important, and it has 4 kilocalories or kcals or calories per gram. So what happens if we have a chap who's 112.5 kilograms? Okay, so in this instance, if we go with 60% carbs, okay, 15% protein, and 25% fat. Then when you work that out, if he's 112.5 kilograms, you need 1 gram of protein per body weight, and you only get 4 calories, so you need 4 times this number. 4 times this number. Anybody? Yep, you got it. It's 450 kcals, which is about 3 chicken breasts, if you're buying 125 gram portions, which seems to be the average one you can buy here in the UK anyway. So if that's 450 calories, by the time you scale the rest of it up, it actually means that you need 750 kcal from fats, and you need 1800 kcal from carbohydrates. So this chap now requires 3000 calories a day. Now we're starting to get closer to the model that if you have 126,000 calories and you divide it by 40 days, you come in at here. Now 2,000 calories a day, like we said, that's probably great for a bus driver, but I would be more inclined to go with the 3,000 calories per day, especially if you're in a survival situation. You may have to process firewood, you have to go and get water, you probably want to put some traps or snares out for animals, etc. So you're almost definitely burning more than what you would be if you're sitting doing nothing all day. Okay, so basically now here, and what I've also done here is, you can, although we're talking about a survival situation, you can clearly see here now that I've given you a tool that if you're going off and planning an expedition with you and your family, and you want to perhaps go away for a week or 10 days or whatever it is, you now have a way of calculating your protein needs, which then tells you the macronutrients that you would require per day, each day for your trip. Okay, so let me clear this board and come back to you. So now we had a look at what a calorie is, what they're made up of, and indeed how many you need. Now we want to look at how they're actually stored. Okay, so these calories get absorbed into the bloodstream, and basically they get converted into glucose. Now the blood can only hold 20 grams of glucose. Okay, so put that number up there, and there's a reason for this, and it'll become apparent. So if we look at our, let's just take that as a little artery, and we've now got 20 grams of glucose in there. As we eat this food, basically what happens, as more and more of this energy comes in and gets converted to glucose, our blood sugars go up. So if this is our normal blood sugar level here, the more sugar that we bring in, basically, which gets converted into glucose, pushes your blood up. Okay, if we continue to do this, then basically what happens is you go hyperglycemic. Okay, so that's the point when you get kids far too much sweeties, they start barking and chasing cars and everything down the road. That's them going slightly hyperglycemic. Okay, and the way the body deals with this is through a hormone called insulin. So let's presume that our little cloth here is insulin, and what this does is the pancreas releases it into the bloodstream, and it goes and mops up all the spare glucose in the blood. Okay, and then what it does with it is it takes it off and it basically stores it in the liver. Okay, and okay, we'll just say the muscle. Okay, it stores it in the muscles as well, and at this point it doesn't become glucose, it becomes glycogen. Okay, and it stores it out there. So like I said, blood itself only holds 20 grams. The liver and muscles actually hold about 18 hours worth. Okay, and then what happens is basically when your blood sugar returns to normal, insulin goes away, and then during the night, as you start running out of glucose in the blood, basically what will happen is the liver will push back some of that stored glycogen back into glucose, and that's known as gluconeogenesis. Okay, and that happens because if your blood sugars go too low, then the opposite happens. Okay, you go hypoglycemic. Okay, and then at this point you would need some, like a sugary boost or something, or to get you back up, to boost your, basically get your blood sugars back up. Okay, so that's the model. Now obviously as you go through the night, you're depleting your glycogen stores, they're getting transferred back to glucose and gluconeogenesis to stop you from going hypoglycemic, and then what happens in the morning is you wake up and you have your breakfast. Okay, you break fast. So at this point you start piling in your fruit juices, your cereals, your breads, all that kind of stuff, and you start the whole process over again, where blood sugar levels will go up, insulin comes out and mops that up. So if we know that there's 20 grams in the blood, and we know there's roughly about 18 hours in the liver and the muscles, what happens to anything more? So once you've filled up the blood, once you've filled up the muscles, and once you've filled up the liver, you got it, it gets transported downstairs and it gets turned into fat. Now that's not strictly true, because when we eat fat it tends to go straight to fat stores, but I'm really trying to keep this video really simple to give you an idea as why sometimes in a survival situation it might not be worth you eating at all, especially in a 72-hour scenario. Okay, and I'll get onto that as we go through. So we've looked at the way it goes in, we're looking at the way the body now stores it, we know about the insulin, and what you might want to think about is that if you call your liver and your muscles the fridge, and then call your lovely midsection, your survival machine, the freezer. Okay, that's basically what it is. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to look at what happens basically if we don't break our fast, which we might not be able to do in that survival situation. What happens? Well, actually what happens is the liver and the muscles start giving back all the stored glycogen. Okay, it gets converted through gluconeogenesis back to glucose, and your body burns that off. But at some point you start to run here. At this point the body will start going for protein, because the body wants to conserve its fat stores, it will go for the protein, so it will start breaking down the muscles basically to get to that protein. But there's a clever thing that's happening. As soon as that starts happening, the body starts to change. The body starts to realise what's happening, and it starts converting everything over to open up the door to allow you to start burning your fat stores. So then all of a sudden, and insulin's the key, so once you've opened up those fat reserves, you now have access to the 126,000 calories that most of us have got stored. And if you look at this handsome survival machine here, I could probably go for half a year without eating. Okay, it is difficult, and I speak from personal experience. When I had my throat cancer, basically at one point I fasted for 12 days without any food. I simply could not eat. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that, but it is doable. It's tough, but it's doable. Okay, so you start opening up the fat stores and you go into that, and what that happens is basically you then go into a thing called ketosis, and this is where the fat comes out and gets processed. The vast majority of that gets processed to ketones, which basically the body can run on. Now the body does need some carbohydrate for brain function, and red blood cells, I believe, need some carbohydrates, but you don't have to worry about that, because in the process of breaking down the body fat, the body can't make its own carbohydrate, only enough to support the functions it needs, and it only does it when it needs it. Okay, but you don't have to have it for sure. You actually don't need any carbohydrate. Now, that's not a preferred long-term model, but short-term it's probably not going to do you any damage, especially if you're fit and healthy and you have this excess body weight, which most of us in the Western world do. Okay, so during ketosis, this whole magical process, it stops breaking down the protein and it starts converting your fat back into energy. And this is probably starting to happen about day 3. And this is why it's really important that you need the water on day 3, because this process, it's, you know, well, for the vast majority of, we're not used to this process at all. So when the body actually kicks in and start doing that, you will find yourself starting to dehydrate a lot faster. You need a lot of water to keep things going in this system. Okay, but this is basically what happens in ketosis. And then basically there's this other thing that happens called autophagy, autophagy. And basically it's like, again, it's like this little wipe. It comes in and it basically runs around the body and it looks at different cells in the body. It basically picks a cell up, it has a look at it, and it says, do I try and repair it or do I replace it? And during ketosis and autophagy, then basically it's going to replace that cell rather than try and repair it. When you have high glucose levels, protein levels, you have the energy there and you have the protein there, so the body will try and repair the cell. During ketosis, the chances are it'll look at the cell. If it's too far gone, it'll simply bin it and it'll replace it with a new one. And interestingly, I've tried to avoid any talk about diets and things like that, because that's not the point of this video. But the difference when you put yourself on a low calorie diet is quite simply, yes, you're burning the fat out of that cell, but there's still insulin in your body while you're eating your reduced calories, which is a trigger to try and store energy. So the body will keep that fat cell because it wants to fill it back up with stored energy. Okay, and then basically what's happening there is, as you're using the energy from that cell, the cell stays there, it's just waiting for better times to fill back up, which is why people who go on extreme crash diets, lack of carbohydrates, or lower their basically the calorie intake, all they're doing is they're messing with their BMR and they're going to end up with all this saggy skin, because the fat cells are still there wanting to be refilled. But that doesn't happen when you're in ketosis. When you're in ketosis, it takes the fat out of the cell, and then it looks at the cell and says, don't need it, burn it. And it will recycle that cell. And again, I don't want to go down diet routes or religious routes or that, but there's a big reason as to why people who are very religious, especially in the Eastern cultures, they all fast. They all fast before they want to meet God, because it's basically, you are recycling yourself. You're getting rid of all those environmental toxins and everything that's been stored up in your body for years, and you're starting to burn them off. Okay, so I think probably there's a good point to stop about that process, and we shall continue on. So now, if we take away the carbohydrates and we're only eating animals, which are a limited amount of plants depending what time of year it is, can you just eat animals and not have carbohydrate? Absolutely. But when you do that, you have to eat all the animal. Okay, you can't just eat the protein, you can't just eat the meat. You have to go for the heart, you have to go for the liver, the eyes, possibly even the contents of that animal's stomach. Okay, you want to utilize every part of that animal, bones, toenails, absolutely everything. You use it because you need it, because it's giving you the fats and the amino acids. Okay, now interestingly enough, there is very little carbohydrates in fat, or indeed in protein. So when you're eating these animals, if you've got access to them outside, then basically you're still going to be in ketosis, because remember we said you have to have 20 grams of glucose in the blood before insulin kicks in to come and mop it up. So if you've not got those if you've not got the insulin working, then you're giving your pancreas a little rest, probably the first time in its life. And then basically you are not eating any sugar, so you don't have that insulin response, so you are staying in ketosis. So you may be getting 1,000 calories from the animal you eat, and then the other 1,000 calories will be coming from your fat stores. So now you can start to see how people like Angus actually, although he was fasting, he had huge amounts of stores. It is possible to go more than 40 days if you are in good health, okay? And like I said earlier, full disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, this is my opinion based on my research. Pregnant ladies, don't try this. People with thyroid problems, people with liver problems, certainly people who are diabetic in any way, shape or form, don't try this, okay? Have a different method. But if you're fit and you're healthy and you're not on medications for various things, then try it. And there's actually no harm just to, if you buy into this model and you want to try it, just start pushing that breakfast out a little bit. So if you normally have breakfast at 8 o'clock, try it at 9 o'clock the next day. Next day after that, 10 o'clock, and so on. And you'd be surprised basically how little food your body actually needs. Okay? So we've talked about that, and we know that we can now eat animals. But what happens if we take the fat away as well, and all we're left is with protein? Now, that's bad news. It's actually called protein starvation. And we don't really have to worry about it now in the West. And I've seen a couple of, actually watched a video on YouTube where a chap basically said, yeah, it's nonsense, I ate rabbits for 2 weeks and nothing happened to me. And I watched that, and the guy had rabbits that looked like sheep. I mean, they were huge. They were domesticated rabbits kept in a hutch, and they were probably had loads and loads of fat stores on them. We're talking about wild animals, potentially at this time of year in the winter, that are running around. They have very, very little fat reserves on them. So when you catch that animal and you cook it up, you're probably only cooking it up on a stick over a fire, which means that any fat that was attached to that animal's flesh is probably just dripped down into your fireplace. So now all you're eating is protein, and that's bad news, because in that process, and again I'm trying to keep it really simple, the process of converting protein back to glucose basically, it involves a process called ATP. And for those who study chemistry or biology and that, you will know that that actually stands for adenosine triphosphate. Okay, now the body has a limit, and it's all to do with the portal vein that controls the liver and the amount of oxygen that's in it. But again, that's beyond the scope of this video. But needless to say, that the body can actually only convert 250 grams of protein back to glucose. Now we know that you only get 4 calories from protein. So if you can only process 250 grams, you can only get 1,000 calories from that. So no matter how many rabbits you eat, you will just remain hungry. You will never satisfy the need, or you'll never satisfy your hunger basically. You will just keep eating and eating and eating. And that there is not, I mean, it's not the end all of that process, because the thing that's going to get you is actually during that conversion back, the byproduct of converting it back to glucose, it basically has ammonia, and that ammonia normally gets dumped in the blood, and it's then converted into a substance called urea. It's taken off to the kidneys where we flush it through, which is why you're going to start needing more and more water on day 3. So basically day 1 you might have some food, or you've had your breakfast or your lunch in the morning, things go a bit pear-shaped. Day 2 you've drained your tank, you've drained the fridge effectively. So on day 3 you are now starting to enter into that ketogenic state and starting to convert all this body fat back to glucose through this process, and that's why you need water on day 3. Okay, like I said, those A acids, the amino acids, once they're broken down, become ammonia, go in the blood, convert it to urea, and they're out. But that process is not very good in the absence of anything else like carbohydrates or fat. So basically that amino or that ammonia is actually just getting dumped in the blood and stored in the blood, which means the toxicity of your blood will just rise and rise and rise, and you'll start to feel really unwell, and eventually you will basically go into a coma and potentially die. Now, like I said, that's not really a problem these days, but you might want to think about if you are planning food based on calories and everything like that. Like I said in Mensch Bag, got a lot of criticism there about not having any food in it, but basically you have to go the learning curve. I'm fully comfortable with my knowledge that I can go a few weeks without food. Those few weeks that I would be going without food, I would be starting to source the animals that I need to hunt and trap, and building in those fat stores. So, but if you are going to carry food and you're in that situation and you want like a stash, or you're one of those preppers who go out and stash stuff in the wilderness and that, it may be that you want to store bottles of fat, basically extra virgin olive oil, avocado oils. You want to start pouring them if you can find good organic butter, and that can store for a long time at the right temperature. So go and take these with you. So if you do find yourself in a situation where all you are doing is eating that lean meat, then at least you can supplement it with a little bit of fat to prevent this happening to you. And that's why when we look back at the survival kit, basically I had that little bit of tin foil in there, so if you are lucky enough to get a pigeon breast or a piece of rabbit, or fish not so much because fish has a lot of fat in it, but that lean protein, if you wrap it up in a tin foil, that will retain some of those essential fatty acids that the body requires, and may prevent you from going into basically protein starvation. So like I said, this video was really just an insight to let you know about food, how to plan for your food, how the body uses it, utilises it, stores it, and ultimately how you can open up the key to get those fat reserves back out of you. So again, if you go back to what we talked about in the survival tin, it may be worth dumping the placebo, Snares, and the Arrowhead, and then putting in some electrolyte tablets, okay? Because when you start drinking large amounts of water to help this process, you're almost certainly going to be losing the salts. So if this model, if it makes sense to you and you think, yep, that's for me, that's my preferred method, it would certainly be mine in a 72-hour survival situation. Long term, yeah, you're going to have to work at other needs, but initially for that 72 hours, in my opinion, it is simply not worth eating, okay? By day 3, like I say, once all those other hormones kick in, the growth hormones and that, you're going to feel fantastic. Just think of the cavemen. When the cavemen never had anything to eat, they didn't simply die there, turn into a big blob of fat and die. No, we're not built like that. Once they went hungry for a few days, they started pulling this fat reserve out. It's like a really clean fuel. These ketones start making you thinking smarter, start making really good decisions. They heighten all your senses, your awareness to your surroundings and everything, because this is your survival mechanism kicking in to say, hey, get up, get smart, and go and get some food and stay alive. Okay, so I'll bring this to an end now because I'm starting to yabble. Do hope you have enjoyed this video, especially the last part. But what I would really like to do, and the reason why I came inside, is because I wanted to see, and it's going to depend on feedback from you guys, whether or not you think that this would be worthwhile to make a standalone video on YouTube. Did you find it boring? Did you find it interesting? Or are you simply, have you already left the party and going watching somebody else? Are you away off to watch a chick in a van? I don't know. But please guys, let me know your comments. Let me know if this has been helpful to you, or if it's been completely boring and you're not interested. If so, I promise I will never bring you this level of carbohydrates and protein and fat again. Okay, so thanks very much for watching, guys. Till the next time, I've got a few ideas coming up in my head of some stuff I'd want to do. If you've got any ideas, leave them in the comments and we'll see if we can get back to you and pick them up. Okay, till the next time, cheers.